Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, my amazing guest is another Jodi. I have had two Jodis on the show, and you guys are really close together too, so it's really funny. But I am just so honored to have you. We actually connected through LinkedIn. Jodi reached out to me, and I had no idea who she was at the time, but we connected and we got on a Zoom call, and it was like this. I don't know. It was like we'd known each other forever. we just
I agree.
we just really hit it off. And so I asked her to be on the podcast, and here she is.
Well, thank you
Today,
so much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Today we're going to be talking about something that is really near and dear to my heart, and it's something that's near and dear to her heart as well. We're going to be talking about overcoming persistent pain. This is something that I've seen in other people a lot. She's seen in other people a lot, and so I really look forward to this conversation. Jodi, thank you for taking the time out today to be here with me. And let's
Oh,
just
you're
talk a little bit. Like tell my listeners, what got you into this? What's your background, how you grew up, anything that you want to share. Because we all have a story, and so it's time to tell yours.
yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I love what you stand for. It's part of the reason I reached out to you, because I just felt like we connected heart to heart. So thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to talk to your listeners about persistent pain. I have been a massage therapist for a long time. In fact, 30 years at
Mm.
this counting. And after being in the room with 20,000 plus somewhat naked people, I've learned a lot about,
I love how
um,
you put that out there.
yeah, about persistent pain.
Mhm.
Because clients, patients would come to me, and I would say over half of the time, probably 80% of the time, it's motivated by some type of pain,
Mhm.
new or chronic. Um, and so over the past 3 decades, I've honed in on what causes persistent pain. And turns out it's a bit of new technology and ancient wisdom,
Mm.
right? So often I know your listeners and you combine traditional medicine and complementary medicine, and really find the best of both worlds. And that's what I'm here to talk about my experience with my clients, tell you a few stories about clients who had persistent pain, and how we got to the source of
Yes.
what was actually causing it. Because that's the big mystery, right?
Hmm.
What's causing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And here in the West, we talk about a lot about biology. What's wrong with your body? Do you have a bulged disc? Do you have a pinched nerve? Um, do you have, a strained ligament, a sprained muscle? You know, what's going on, with the body? And really, pain is so much more than physical.
Ooh, yes. That's I'm really looking forward to diving into this a little bit more, because this is something that I learned in my personal life, and I had worked with clients, as a personal trainer. I'd worked with clients that have fibromyalgia and other chronic pain in their bodies. But I never looked at the chronic pain in my body and where that was, the root of that. I didn't look at that part because it's so much easier to, look at everybody else's pain, but when you start looking at your own pain and start realizing, oh, this could be a trauma response, it's a stress response. So I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but that's something that I've just been very interested in over the last few years since I started my healing journey, because now I'm seeing that, when my pain heightens, it's due to some outside effect. But that's not what they teach us, right? They teach us, oh, here's some painkillers, here's some in the military, we used to call it vitamin M. Here's some Motrin. Like, it'll make it all better. No, right?
Well, and certainly, and thank you for your service,
Thank you.
Jody. I have such deep respect for the military. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And certainly in the military, there is the reputation that there's a lot of physical activity, a lot of physical demands.
Yes.
And yet, when our soldiers come home, when our our military personnel are out of the fight or flight scenario, whether it's home or abroad,
Mm-hmm.
then there's a residual nervous system situation,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, there's just yeah. In fact, can I tell a story about one soldier
Yeah,
that
of
I worked
course.
with? So technically, he's World War II, actually.
Mm,
And so technically he was Army Air Force, but he was a
okay.
pilot.
Right.
And I tell the story about Jim with permission. I use his real name. Um,
Thanks,
and
Jim.
with permission, yeah, from his family. And Jim was part of World War II.
Mm,
And Jim got shot down flying his plane.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And he lost the bottom half of his right leg,
Mm,
just below the knee. Well, he lost the bottom half of his right leg, and there's a whole story on how he finally gets to the surgery center.
yeah.
And the doctors make a crazy choice, which they weren't supposed to make, but they save his knee. Well, fast forward 60 years, 50 years, and Jim comes in for a massage. And as I'm doing my normal, hey, what's going on with your body? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew he had a prosthetic.
Right.
He said, well, I've had phantom pain in my right foot for, let's see, he was 70 at the time. So for 45 years.
Wow.
But my right foot's not there. Can you do anything about that?
What do you say to that?
Well, what do I say to that? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. This is because the body is unique. Every
Yes.
single person is unique.
Yes.
And there's no cookie cutter answer.
Not at all.
And
Not at all.
at that point, I had never worked on a stump, and he wanted work on the leg.
Hmm.
And so we worked with that. And for the first time in Jim's life, he had 3 or 4 days of relief from the phantom pain.
Mm.
Now, it would
Wow.
come back. And over the 7, 8 years that we worked together, it would come back. And I felt frustrated, because I'm like, oh, I really want that to heal.
Right.
And yet, there was something about that experience. He described it as feeling like his bare foot was stepping onto hot tar.
Mm. Wow.
But there was something about that experience that brought him back to his mission.
Mm.
He became a big advocate for peace. He worked in many departments of the government because you could back then.
Yeah.
Um, and he was a calm and quiet advocate for no war.
Mm.
And so I think part of his healing journey was to have something that reminded him of why he feels this way now. He's
Wow.
since passed. He joined
Mm.
his lovely wife, Mary. And yeah, there's so many beautiful stories. I could keep going,
Yeah.
but I will stop there. Just suffice to say that that was biology on some level,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, he
And I'm
had a
sure
physical.
there's many people who deal with that because if you think about all the combat veterans that come back and they, lose limbs or, and all the PTSD, the things that people see. I mean, I've heard stories, and I'm just like, so there's so many people out there. So I'm grateful that you shared that story because I really hope that someone out there needs it and they can be like, oh my gosh, because that's the beauty of doing this where we're sharing these stories and someone out there, they don't know why they're having that pain. But now maybe
Mm.
they can think about it or they can think about it differently, right? Because when you go to the doctor, all they do is just give us medications, right? But it's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
so much deeper.
It is. And it's scary. It's scary to look at it, but I'd like to assure your listeners that if you're experiencing something as a result of your service to this country, you are not broken.
Hmm.
You are not, you don't have a disorder. We do like to say PTSD, right?
Right.
There's been a little shift that says PTSI,
That's I
post-traumatic stress
actually, yes,
injuries,
one of
right?
my contributors to Reclaim Your Life, she actually wrote that in there, the PTSI. Yes.
It's a mindset shift
Yes.
because you're all about your show and me too. We're all about empowering people to say you are not helpless in this situation.
Right.
You may not have found the help you need yet. And it might be tiring and it might be frustrating, but I assure you that there's a purpose in the journey.
Mm. Yes.
There's a
That's
purpose in the
beautiful.
pain.
Ooh, yes. Yes, that's one of the things that I say because it's something that someone told me a few years ago, but I didn't see it yet, right? It wasn't until I had to go through the journey and I was told your pain is your purpose, right? And but we have to, like you said, it's a mindset shift. I wasn't ready at that time. I didn't even know what that meant, right? But as we continue to go through the journey, then, we can learn what that actually means. I'm interested to know, what got you into massage therapy?
I got a massage.
Okay, that's
That
easy
was my
enough.
kind of awakening
I
moment.
love it.
Yeah.
I love
I
that.
was at a time of my life where, you know, just working three jobs,
Mm,
um, and,
been there.
trying
That's
to make ends
exhausting.
meet,
Yes.
exhausted. And someone said, yeah, actually it was during my third job, which was at a restaurant, and I would, um, waiting tables.
Hmm.
Um, and someone said, "Oh, so and so just, isn't going to be, she's not part of our team anymore. She actually became a massage therapist. And she's looking for people, to come and get a massage from her." And I knew the young lady.
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, sure, I'll go help her out."
Yeah. That's what it seems like, right? Like, yeah, we're gonna do them a favor, and in all reality.
Well, I don't know what happened that day. I still can't really describe what happens when you go to that happy place
Yes.
during a massage. Like you're just in like la la land. Although I was reading a book recently that talked about the different brainwave functions,
Hmm.
as far as deep sleep and delta, creativity and beta and alpha. But then there's this theta, right? This kind of place where we access our subconscious. And I believe that there are some sessions of massage therapy that allow us to just reset,
Mm,
to recalibrate,
yeah.
and be like, okay, ooh.
Yeah.
And when I had that happen to me, I said, wow, I should really do this for my family. I should learn how to do this. And
Yeah.
it planted a seed,
Yeah.
to be honest. I mean, I was 21, maybe,
Hmm.
but it planted a seed that said, learn how to do this one day. It was kind of like when I took my first trip to South America. And I really loved these blankets. I loved these pots. And I could only speak English. And so Quanto Cuesta only went so far. Like
Yes.
how much does it cost, right?
Yes.
And I felt so American,
Yes.
you know? And so I had the good fortune to not only, and that planted a seed,
Yes.
right? Learn to speak Spanish one day. Learn to speak
Yes.
Spanish. Well, as divine order has it, um, I learned a little bit of Spanish, but then I got the job with a professional soccer team and spent 10 years with Team DC United in Washington, D.C. as
Okay.
a massage therapist.
Nice.
So ahora yo puedo hablar en español y puedo tener una conversación. Todo, no, I'm not bilingual yet. I'm
Yeah.
not bilingual yet. Pero,
I love
if
it.
I
I
need to
love it.
explain something in Spanish, dame la oportunidad, you know?
My Florida listeners are like, yes.
Yes, un poco de español. Sí, yeah.
No, that's awesome. And it's so interesting how, we get placed in these situations and it's like, well, I want to learn that, right? Like, that's how my entire journey's been, whether it was to help me or someone else. That's why I learned what I learned, and so I always have the utmost respect for those of us who do that because unfortunately, a lot of people just stay comfortable and they'll stay miserable and they won't venture out even though there's a tug and a pull and it's like do this, right? And so I was interested to know that because everybody has a different story of why they get into different things. So I appreciate you sharing that just for everybody to know kind of what got you into that, but it just took that. And oh my gosh, the fact that you had a great massage made it even better because it's just like any other profession, right? Where some massage therapists are great. Some don't put me in the theta. Okay, we'll just say that. So, but that's why I tell people too, just keep going till you find the right one, right? So I love that you
Absolutely.
shared that. Let's shift because I want to talk about your book just a little bit and just talk a little bit about, what you've seen as far as people who are really stressed or people who, because we talk about trauma in the military, but then I found out that I had trauma from my entire upbringing, right? So I
Mhm.
had years and years of trauma compiled with the trauma from the military. So talk a little bit about what you've seen in your journey as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I knew I was in the right space when I started my journey because as far as being a massage therapist, because early on I had a client, um, we'll call her Mary,
Hmm.
um, and very traditional massage, nothing really going on. She was just stressed. But when I started to work with her lower leg, I was working on a leg, she was face up, and all of a sudden I heard like a little hiccup or a breath change.
Mm.
And so much of communication is nonverbal, right?
Yes.
And so I looked and I saw that my client had tears in her eyes.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, that's not normal. And so I hands off and said, did that hurt?
Hmm.
Is what I'm doing, does that hurt you? And she said, no, no. I just remembered something. I remembered being in my kitchen, sitting on the kitchen floor with my backs up against the cupboard and my husband kicking me.
Mm.
And she said, I told myself for a long time it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. And she said, I used to say that he only did it when he was angry or only did it when he was drinking or, you know, and she said, I'm no longer with him, but I just remembered that. And it's an example of muscle memory.
You were in that part of her body.
No one had touched her body in a caring and nurturing way.
Right. Mm.
And it allowed this kind of bubble of a
I got
memory
chills.
to
Oof.
surface. Yeah. And, in psychology and in medical terminology, we call that a somatic emotional release.
Right.
Um, and it wasn't boisterous. It was quiet and it was introspective. And I said, yes, yes, this is the space that I want to facilitate for my clients, for my patients,
Mm.
um, so that they feel safe to release,
Yes.
to release the stress, to release the emotion, to integrate the memory,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes there's unintegrated memories, and to integrate a memory and be like, yep, that happened.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's beautiful. I grew up with domestic violence, so I've seen a lot too. And so when you were saying, I think that's why I just felt it in every, everything because, I've seen it as a kid growing up, but to be in that situation and what you said, and I really want to point this out for anyone out there because there's a lot of people who haven't endured, we've all endured some kind of trauma, but there's a lot of people who haven't endured like deep trauma, deep wounds like that, right? And so having those kind of emotional outbursts seems kind of not normal to a lot of people, right? And so we tend to, and I say we as a society, we tend to not pay attention to those things. So I want to honor you because you paid attention. And that takes a whole different level of being in tune with people because not too many people, I come in contact with a lot of people, and I'm sure you do too. There's not a lot of people who actually pay attention. And I'm one of those people too, but it's because I've gone through a lot of the trauma therapy and, we talk about the body keeping the score. I went through one therapy called neuro-emotional technique, which it actually uses your body to tell the story, things you don't even remember, right? Because it's one thing to talk things out, but this was like, I mean, this was before I was even born. How am I supposed to know this as a zygote in my mother's stomach, right? Like, how I don't know these
Yeah.
things, right? And so when you find those things out, so I just wanted to point that out real quick because for everybody out there, someone around you is in pain. And I'm not talking about physical, I'm talking about mental and emotional. And I just hope that you will take a moment to pay attention.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And you make a great point. Not everyone's been through something. In fact, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome when I first started doing this work because
I'm
I
sure
don't
we all
have
go through
some
that.
massive, like, oh, this, life-changing moment. Um, and yet it's in the moments that aren't necessarily life-changing
Mhm.
where we spend hopefully 90% of our time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I talk about Karen in the book, um, different name, uh, but she came and got a session. She's like, oh my gosh, she goes, I was backing out of my driveway. And as soon as I turned my head to back out of the driveway, I got this such a crick in my neck. Oh, and I think many people have probably had that where they turn their
Yes.
head and all of a sudden it catches and you're
Yes.
like, oh, ooh. And I'll point out that our human nature is to rub it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Even kids rub their belly when it's
Yep.
upset, right? And so Karen was there, and I wondered if there was any correlation between what was happening in her life right then and there,
Mm,
because she's backed out of her driveway 1,000 times,
hmm.
you know, what made it different? Was it cold? Was it, you what was the situation?
Right.
And her situation was she had been called that morning by her son to get a pain pill. Her son had been dealing with misusing alcohol, overusing pain medication.
Mm,
And so, as his mom, he said, and they lived close,
mm,
within a mile of each other.
yeah.
She said, look, this is not going to be a thing. I'm going to hold on to your pain medication. And when you want a pain pill, you call me. Well, he had called at 5:30 that morning. And she wasn't the first time. And he had roused himself up into an emotional state
Mm,
that said, look, I need it now. Bring it to me or I'm coming over. And what Karen didn't want to look at was that he was addicted,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so her mom, Jean, kicked in. And she was in the car, 20 minutes later, bringing him a pain pill. And as she pulled out of the driveway,
She was carrying. Oh my gosh, that, we could have a whole nother podcast on shame and guilt. That's definitely something that I've had to work through as well. And different situations can trigger, shame and guilt. And I can only imagine, being a mom, I can only imagine what that felt like in that moment and the guilt that she was probably carrying, and so just by turning her neck, it it brought all that out. Wow.
well, what I said to her, and actually the correlation I make in the book, I said, Karen, I think your pain in the neck has a name.
Okay. I have to laugh at that because that is funny. I hope she laughed.
She did. She did. And, yes, because of the heightened stress,
Yes.
right? Then there was a biological condition.
Mm,
Yeah, she could have been dehydrated. She could have been tired. She could have been, her muscles weren't warmed up yet. Yes, I know all the things.
right.
That's why I do the physical work,
Right.
because there are physical things.
Yeah.
And yet, what I've had the opportunity to do is look at the body through the biology, but also the mental
Hmm.
and like the social, what's going on, the social situations. And in the 1970s, Dr. George Engel talked about the biopsychosocial model for traditional medicine.
Yes.
And to look beyond the blood test, to look beyond the MRI, to look beyond ordering another test and say, hey, what's going on in your life right now?
But isn't that the interesting thing? Because that was so long ago. And yet here we are, all these years later, and modern medicine still says, no, here's a painkiller, right? Here's a prescription. Here, put a band-aid on it, right? And it's like, no, we have to get to the root of the cause. I had a client with fibromyalgia who was able to heal through her journey. And that's why I started shifting what I did, because we got to a deeper level. It wasn't just me
Mm.
showing her how to exercise around that pain or eat
Oh,
better, right? It was, these are deep things that she was harboring. And that can lead. Yeah, I had a physical therapist one time, and he actually asked me that one time. So that's why I honor, you guys that really pay attention, all of us that really pay attention. Like, we have to honor ourselves with that because that's huge. Not everybody does it. But he said the same thing. He said, "What are you going through right now?" I had pain in every part of my body, right? And I've had a lot of surgeries. I've had, things that I've dealt with over the years, but he was just like, "What are you going through right now?" And I was like, "Well, we have this extra family in the house, we had this happen, this that." I was carrying it all.
yes.
But what do? We just keep going. We just keep
Yeah,
going.
we plow through, right? And so and hats off to men who are doing this, but so many women end up doing this, just
Yeah.
plowing through.
Yeah.
And before we leave traditional medicine, and the biopsychosocial model, I'd like to point out that patients are also to blame. I'm not putting blame on
Very
doctors
much
or
so.
patients. I
No, no,
shouldn't
no. I
use the
agree.
word blame, but there's a role that patients play,
Hmm.
and we saw this during COVID, during the COVID-19. There's no penicillin that's going to take care of this. And yet people were going to their doctor demanding to get a prescription.
Hmm.
We as a population have been conditioned to want to stop our pain quickly and not
Yeah.
explore it. And sometimes doctors are under a lot of pressures, nurse practitioners, PAs,
Yeah.
they're under pressure. Like if the patient came in and didn't leave with a script, why did they come in?
They get mad. Patients
Yeah.
can get
And so I
mad. I've
just want
seen that
to,
before. No,
share
you're
the
you're
share the
exactly right.
responsibility there,
You are exactly right. And we are in the generation of, like we say this all the time, it's like a Pop-Tart generation, right? It's like everybody wants the quick fix. And even with what I do, like I had to come to terms with the fact I'm going to be people's last resort.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I'm not gonna give you a quick fix. There is not one. We're gonna do the work. So if you're not ready to do the work, that's fine. Come back to me later, right? And I had to work on that because I just love to help people, right? And so I had to get to a point where I had to be okay with saying, you know what, it's just not the right time, and we'll explore, maybe we can explore it later, right? But that's the thing, we live in this society, we've trained, and social media plays a big part in this too, because we're trained to just get our responses. Google, right? We can go on Google and look up anything and get our responses fast. And so we go to the doctor with the same expectation. Fix it. Just fix it.
Yep. Oh yeah. And because our brains work the way they do, we tend to go down the same path. And so I've seen a number of my clients, my patients, who had a surgery, got some relief, and so now the next time they have just a little ache or pain, oh, I hope I don't have to have surgery. Oh, I hope I don't have to have surgery. And it's like, no, actually, you don't. I mean, yes, if your appendix is about to burst, you need surgery.
Yes.
Yes, you need to have the appendix out.
Yes.
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 But what does the long and winding road look like?
Yeah.
You know? And well, the tagline, my book is called The Body Blueprint, but the tagline of it on the title is how your pain may be telling a story.
Yes.
What story? What's the message
Yeah.
in the pain? And hey, if you don't want to look at it, by all means, but consciously don't look at it.
Yeah.
Consciously don't look away. Just say, we're not going to deal with that right now. Okay, we're not going to deal with that right now.
Yeah.
But the body tends to
Oh, it's
tap you on the
telling it.
shoulder,
It's telling it.
tap you on the shoulder again,
Mm-hmm.
and then it picks up a 2x4 and is like,
That was I mean, that you're telling my story right now. And
yeah,
sometimes even the 2x4 wasn't big enough for me. I had to wait until there was another one down the road. It's like you get hit pretty hard. And it's funny because I've had a few people that I've talked about this, that we've been through a lot. And it's like you get hit pretty hard, and then it's like, okay, you get knocked down and you go to the floor, but now you can get knocked down and you can go even further. Like, and I laugh about it now because I can, but that's the thing, I've lived that, where it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to face the pain. And that's why I understand where people are when they're just not ready. And that's okay. That's okay. I
totally
don't
okay.
ever judge anybody. It took me 40, I was 43 before I started that journey. Right. And it really got to the point where I wasn't even able to operate in a healthy
Sounds
manner,
like.
but I was
And that people,
really, go ahead.
I hear you. I mean, it takes people a while
Yeah.
to say, okay, I'm going to step back and really get to and sometimes it's after the kids are grown,
Hmm.
or after the kids are out of school, you know, or when we're empty nesters,
Yeah.
or when I retire, or because there's all the things,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's all okay.
Yeah.
Wherever your listeners are at today, they are perfect,
Yeah.
perfect, literally perfect, because it's a part of their journey. They need all of these accumulated experiences. You needed
Yes.
all of the accumulated experiences to get over the stubbornness of I can make it
Yes.
work.
Yeah.
I've met you.
I talk about
Yes.
this all the
Yes.
time. I mean, I tell people I'm very transparent when it comes to all that now. Maybe 10 years ago I wouldn't have been because I didn't even know it was there. But now that, yeah, I'm like, hey, I'm one of the most stubborn people I know. But God
But
is
it
working
also
on
makes you
me.
very tenacious. But
Yeah,
God's
yeah.
working on all of us, whether you call it God, the universe, or your
Right.
intuition, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because the intuition is where we first hear that still small voice.
That's it.
Um,
Yeah.
Am I broke? Is there something actually wrong with me?
Yeah.
And I will assure you, no, no.
Yeah.
Even if you're listening to this and you're getting a chemo treatment, I promise you, it is a beautiful, beautiful part of your journey.
Yeah. Yes. It allows us to inspire people on a whole different level. Like the conversations I have now compared to the conversations I had probably 7 years ago when I look back, I mean, they're just so different, but they're different in a great way. Like I'm able to have these types of conversations now, whereas back then I just wasn't, and then I wondered why people just kind of looked at me a certain way, right? And I'm like, oh, well, that's why, right? I wasn't sharing anything, but I didn't know that I needed to. And so again, that's why I honor, people like you and those of us who are actually paying attention because, like I always call myself a seed planter. So when you said that about planting seed, being I just plant seeds now, and I'll just share a little sometimes if I'm in a conversation and I'll say, well, this is kind of what I went through. And then it's done. And I don't know what happens after that. Sometimes I hear back from them, sometimes I don't. But I just know that I planted a seed. And so I just, I think that those of us who get to do that are just, I mean, I can't even imagine doing anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. This has been such a rich conversation.
Yes.
I'm sure your listeners will want to comment uh, and
Yes, please do.
and share their stories. I'm all about it. I'm
Yeah.
all about it. Please, and, what you've been through. Send us like your waking up moments. Because sometimes we have a wake up moment, but what I've experienced in my own life is that we have a lot of waking up moments,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So I really appreciate this beautiful, rich conversation,
Me too.
uh,
Me too.
and the stories and for you to just share of yourself as much as you do, Jodi. It's really a gift for your listeners.
Well, thank you. And same for you. Like you're a gift for people. Just the fact that you do what you do, but you, like I said, that whole paying attention thing is not so common. I've had many people around me who just don't pay attention. And it used to affect me in a way where I would be like, well, what's wrong with me? But in all reality, I just needed to be around people who paid attention. And they're just
Yeah,
like, they don't need to know what's wrong with me. They just
yeah.
give me a hug, right? And it's just paying attention. And I get to be that for other people, and you get to be that for other people. And so I just I want to thank you for everything that you do. We didn't even touch on, some of the other stuff that you do, but we'll bring you back.
That'd
We'll
be
bring
fun.
you back. But I definitely want to thank you. How can people connect with you?
The easiest way to connect is on my website. It's my name, jodischoles.com. Also, the book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the normal places. It would be so helpful to me, my campaign in the moment, and so if you're hearing it, it's in this moment, is to get more reviews
Mm,
of the book.
love it.
It's fairly new to publication, and I would love for you to read a chapter and to just read one chapter. It's available really, really affordably on Kindle. But just read one chapter and give me your feedback.
Love it. Well,
Because
I'll be
each
doing
chapter
that
really
because I
stands
have a
alone.
copy.
Ah, well, and I would be remiss if I did not mention you.
Yes, everyone. For everybody who is not watching on video, we did swap books. So, and
Yeah,
I'm grateful, when I always love when I have podcast guests that are, authors and have a great story to tell, because that's what we do. I'm like, well, what if we book swap, right? So definitely looking forward to continuing to support you in whatever way I can. And just for all the listeners out there, I really hope that this conversation gave you a different perspective and planted a seed in your life that maybe you didn't even know existed. So thank you again, Jodi, for being on the show. The power of the Jodis. Oh my goodness. Um, I told another guest, I was like, we're gonna have a Jodi call because there's so many now.
I
I
love
now
it.
know six total Jodi, Jodi, just Jodi, not Jodi in general, but just Jodi. It's pretty interesting.
Oh my goodness. Awesome.
Oh man, but thank you so much again for just taking the time out and offering, your perspective and what you've seen. And again, I just really hope that it resonates with those people out there that needed to hear it. So thank
And
you,
thank you.
everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for continuing to support the show. And please connect with Jodi because she's just an amazing soul. and she can
Mm,
help so many people, and she is already doing that.
thanks
She's
so much.
inspired me too. So,
Thanks so much, Ms. Watkins. And
aw,
I appreciate the invitation.
thank you. Have a great day, everyone.